test cases. Oops.
It's
Creating, yeah, so creating test cases to, you know, find that break in the system. So that's my understanding of it. And there's two different types of test cases. There's positive and negative. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion was around in our group study, was around the positive and negative test cases. I tried my best to kind of notate that and implement positive and negative when I was creating my test cases, but I think kind of discussing a little bit more about the differences and seeing some more examples might help. But that's my understanding, and I don't know if I said it correctly or not.
Oh, you're good. You're good. So were you able to watch the video that I attached with the homework?
I did. I only watched, I'll be honest, like a quarter of it. Yeah, so I don't know at what point they talked about the positive and the negative, but I only got through a quarter of it.
How many of you watched that video, complete video, end to end? Feel free to raise your hand or something that really know like the percentage of people who watched that video. Three, four. Still five. That would be disappointing. If it's only 5 people, that would be very, very disappointing. Okay. Just 5 people, that would be very, very disappointing. I would encourage you guys to go and watch that video. Once you watch that video, you would know the difference between what you understand now and what you should understand. So that video is attached. It's with your homework link. Please, I encourage you, please watch that video. Me personally, being in this field for a long time, like really long time, working in this field for 10 years. I'm in this field for probably 15 years. I came across this video 2 years ago, and when I watched that video, I learned so much about test cases. The way I used to think about writing test cases has changed because of this video, you know. So I really encourage you guys to watch that video. Then you'll understand what it, I mean, obviously you understand what is test case, but not everybody is capable of creating good test cases, test scenarios, attacking a functionality, to be able to break a functionality. For you as a QA, you are not here to fix anything. You're here to find issues. And how do you find issues? How do you, with those scenarios, how do you have that kind of mindset that I want to be able to break that functionality? It sounds weird. Like a lot of us have issues being negative, right? To be a good tester, you really have to be negative. You have to establish those kind of mindset. I have issues with that. Like I usually think like if they build something, it should work, and it works. Like a lot of us struggle with this. A lot of us testers, we think that if they created something, it works automatically. We have that mindset. But as a tester, we need to come out of that comfort zone, that mindset. We need to be able to break the system. And we need to be very creative about it, how we break a system. So there are questions in the interview, right? They can ask you, write me test cases for something. It could be anything, any simple thing. It could be like I gave you a pen. It could be a chair. It could be a door. And when they do that, right, 80% of the testers, they'll be stuck giving them 2 to 3 scenarios or 2 to 3 test cases, and they will be stuck. They won't be able to give more scenarios if you do not have proper knowledge. But as a tester, you should be able to come up with 20 scenarios for any type of test, any type of requirement. You should be good enough to give 20 scenarios for anything. Until then, if you don't get there, you're not a good tester. And how do you do that? Like if you think about a pen, how many scenarios can you come up with? Like if you're a normal person, 2, 3, 4 maybe, and you'll be stuck. Like if I ask you, like, give me maximum test cases or test scenarios out of a pen, how would you test a pen? What are you going to say? You're going to say, all right, I'm going to make sure that pen works. You're probably going to say, like, pen exists, then it writes and the ink is black, and then what? What is your next scenario? You're probably going to be stuck. So we need to be able to have that kind of mindset that, okay, for a pen or even for a door, right? These are the simplest thing. Like when it comes to tests, all you need to do, see if it works, does it exist or does it work? That's it, 2, 3 scenarios. But when you come out of those box and start thinking outside the box, that's when you know there is a different ball game there, and you need to understand, right? You know how to do that. So again, I'll encourage you, please go ahead and watch that video. The way you think of testing and writing test cases, now it's going to change entirely. So that's that. Now, just think about when it comes to test cases, right? Test cases are driven from requirement. We have a requirement, and we'll, like we said before, right? We'll analyze, understand, read, study the requirement. And once we do that, and once we're clear on that, now we're going to sit down and start breaking that requirement into scenarios. We'll see, like, how many different scenarios can we come up with out of this specific requirement, and you want to maximize it. Okay, scenario 1, 2, 3, 4. These are my positive scenarios. And now I need to come up with negative scenarios. And not everything will have negative scenarios, but mostly you should have negative scenarios, right? There could be boundary value scenarios. There could be other scenarios, but you need to come up with scenarios. And once you have those scenarios ready, now you're gonna design them. And once you design them, that becomes your complete test cases. And the whole designing of it, right? You know, the description, the steps, the expected result, actual results, things like this, right? Becomes your test cases. Now, you know, in the interview, they could ask you, like, how do you design test cases, or how do you create test cases? So when they do that, when they ask you, you just tell them, like, you know, test cases, you give them test case description, and then you talk about, like, what are the things you include in your test cases. And nowadays, we're not seeing those questions. They're asking more of, like, give me maximum scenarios of a specific requirement. So this is what people are focusing on. But, you know, don't be surprised if they ask you to explain what is test cases and what does it include, things like this. Any further questions about test cases? All right, if you do not have any questions, we'll move on. Okay, so we were studying STLC. So we're still in STLC. We have completed analysis of the, well, let's just say requirement phase, test plan phase, and test cases. So we still need to work on test cases. You guys haven't completed your test cases entirely, and you haven't watched the video, so you don't know entirely what is test case and how to create those test cases. So please go ahead and watch those videos. Now moving on, the next phase is RTM. RTM is requirement traceability metrics. So what it is, what RTM does is ensures that you have test coverage for all the requirement, right? So on a given project, you will have multiple requirements, and the number could be anything depending on the project. If you have a small project, you will have probably, I can't give you any numbers because it's impossible to give you numbers, but I could probably show you. Let me see if I can show you in my work. In my screen with my dashboard here. Actual work. You can see my Jira dashboard. Can you hear me?
Brother, you're cutting off a little bit.
Oh, that's not good. That's not good. Okay.
Is all the students paying attention? Because I see no one correcting Kadir Bayana's voice. Can everybody hear him clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
Not really, because he is breaking off.
So if you guys have
Okay.
an issue like that, you have to speak up.
All right. I do apologize, guys. Is it any better now?
Yes, good.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So if you see my screen, so I was talking about requirement traceability metrics that we're going to cover today, which is our fourth phases of STLC. And requirement traceability metrics, what it does, it ensures test coverage of your requirement, right? So when you are given requirements, your job is to create test cases. Now, in your project, you will have multiple requirements for same project, right? It could be any number. No one can give you exact number. It could be hundreds of requirement or less than 100 and whatnot. So when you have that kind of number and your task is to create test cases for them, how do you ensure that you have written test cases for each one of the requirement? That's where RTM comes in. RTM maps out test cases against the requirement to ensure that you have test coverage for each of the requirement. Does it make sense, guys? The description itself?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes,
I'll show you. Yeah. So I'll show you here, like, how do we create? First, let me show you. Let me see if I can show you an example. So if I go to Team Coconut, I will go to their backlog. Okay, so if you see their backlog, right, they have so many requirements, right? All of these tickets you're seeing here, it's nothing but a requirement. So each one of them represent a functionality. So you can see the number here. This is what. 88 tickets. Like you can see here, they have 88 tickets. That's mean 88 requirements are written here so far, and they'll continue to add, right? So your job is to create test cases for all of them. And how do you ensure that you have created test cases for all of them? By creating an RTM. So RTM can be created many different ways. You can create the RTM in an Excel sheet, or you can create RTM if your company is using a tool, like let's say in this case, we're using Jira tool. This tool automatically can create RTM for you, requirement traceability metrics for you. Any other tools that those tools nowadays every tool has this RTM in place, so you don't have to do anything separately. So first I'm going to show you how it's done in Excel, and then I'll show you here how it's done as well. So if we go to Excel, right, so we had you guys remember we had probably 3 or 4 requirements here we have done a lot more than 3 or 4. So we worked on first we worked on the demo Guru 99 market tour application last week when we're creating test cases on the class but then we have given you assignment for a different requirement, which is totally fine. And here you can see example of RTM right here. It says requirement traceability metrics, and on one side you have requirement description and requirement details, right, for like requirement ID and description, and the other side we have respective test cases. For example, we don't really need this column, so these two, I'm just going to hide them so you don't get confused. Where is this? All right, so this could be as simple as this. The traceability metrics could be as simple as this. So in one side you have requirement ID, and the other side the associated test cases. So if you look at this here, this requirement 001, it has 3 test cases. So you map them against this. Previously priority and bug ID, these are optional. All you really need is the requirement ID or requirement identifier and the test case identifier. You can add description, you can add anything else after that, but you really need this too to ensure that you have test case coverage. If you look at requirement 002, this one only had 1 test cases against it. Requirement 001, it has 3 test cases against it. Similarly, if you move down to requirement 003, it has 2 test cases against it, and requirement 004 has 2 test cases as well. So these are just examples. You are mapping out your test cases against your requirement, and that's your RTM. This is used for reporting purpose, test coverage purpose to your manager or anyone. No one really looks for this document, but if they do, you have it in place. So this is how you create it on Excel sheet. I'm going to show you how you can do it on the actual application. So here is one way you can do, like here. So another way you can do, like right here, this is a fancy board. It has everything in one place, right? And you'll get access to this board as well. Like not particularly this board, but a board like this, and you'll be able to work with it later. But just to show you how it's done, right? So my test coverage is right here. You can see my requirement traceability metrics are right here. So you can see all of these tickets or requirement we have currently for our project. If you look at this section right here, is showing how many of them has test cases, it does not. So this right here on the right hand side is 53% of the requirement does not have coverage. This is uncovered. We did not create test cases for it. We have created test cases for rest of them. Different color code is representing different things. For example, first one is saying 7% requirements are okay, meaning we have created test cases, we have executed them, and everything passed. There is no issues, there is no bugs. And then we have 15% of them, we do have test cases and test coverage in place. However, there is a bug in place. So this one is representing that. And then 23% of the requirement is showing that we have test cases written, but we did not execute them yet. So all of these first three are fine, nothing to worry. These are expected. But here, if you look at the last one, 53% requirement does not have coverage. So this is where we need to focus. This is where we need to go ahead and create our test cases. So this is, if you click here, it's going to take you to exact tickets or the requirements that you need to work in to create your test coverage, which is your test cases. Does this make sense, guys? Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Just, I want to kind of understand a little bit more about requirements. So for example, the pen requirement that was sent to us, would that whole thing be considered one requirement, or would each section or like each rule within the requirement be a different requirement? Like requirement number one would be, you know, the paper, like what kind of paper it can write on. And then requirement number two would be waterproof ink. And then requirement number three would be it's a round pen, doesn't have sharp edges. Is that how we would number the requirements, or this whole entire document is requirement number one? And then we would make test cases for requirement number one. I think I'm a little bit confused.
Okay, so this each lines will represent a individual requirement.
Oh,
You probably have here 7, 8 requirements.
okay. Okay, I misunderstood. On the homework, I just did one requirement for the whole
Okay.
thing.
Yeah, so yeah, two ways of looking at it. So remember we talked about agile and waterfall. If your environment is agile, you're looking at 7, 8 test requirements here. But if you're working in waterfall, this whole thing would be one requirement. So you won't be wrong, because we didn't define which environment we are working on. So putting them in one big requirement, and you create test cases against everything entirely, like in one flow, you won't be wrong entirely. But ideally, what you want to do, like I mentioned over and over again, that everyone is either working in agile or moving toward agile. So, and we will be practicing agile. We'll be doing our project in agile. So you want to treat it as such. So these are like each line will be representing an individual requirement. But it ties back to the main project, right? Which is the pen, where that pen thing is. We're testing a pen, basically. Makes sense.
Hi, Kadir Bhai. I have a question.
Yes, brother, go ahead.
can you, can there be a case where you have too many test cases? Or is
Good
that
question.
a good thing?
No, you cannot have too many test cases as long you make sense, right? For
Okay.
example, I mean, as a tester, the more scenarios you create, the better it is. The more way you can test an application, better it is. But you also need to understand, like, you know, if you're creating similar thing over and over again, you want to partition them. You want to make less scenarios to serve the purpose. For example, if you're testing something, 100, let's say 20-digit character, you have an input box, and that input box supports 20-digit, the length of it 20-digit. Now, do you want to create 20 test cases, one for each digit? Probably not, right? You want to create, you want to partition them. So each partition can be like, let's say you create the scenarios to test something from 1 to 10, a scenario to cover 1 to 10 digit, and a scenario 11 to 20, and things like this. These are your positive test cases, and your negative would be something more than 20 digit. That's one scenario, and another scenario not putting any digit, leaving the field empty and testing it. So 4 to 5 scenarios should be fine instead of 20 different cases. Does it make sense?
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
Cool, brother. All right, so what's important here to understand is traceability metrics, how it is done, and why we need it. So going back here, your test coverage is your traceability metrics. Your job is to make sure when the requirement is given, your job is to make sure that you create your test cases and you track them. You have them somewhere in a way, in an organized manner, that you know that you are creating test cases for your requirement. And also, you know, the project team, if they want to see that, for me, like, look at this, like this is automatically created here, and I made it available for everyone to see it, right? So now this project team, like, they can come in and see. If they have any question, they don't need to ask me. They can just go to this location and see the test coverage, the test requirement traceability metrics coverage. Okay, so that's that. So this is another way of creating traceability metrics, and I'll show you one more way. So if we go here, you see test coverage. This is one section. You can go here and get your, this is something this tool does automatically. Actually report to see your test coverage. Like, you could do that, but this is something requires some manual work, right? For example, you need to add those details, like which all test cases or which project, which environment, all of these details you need to provide here, and then it will fetch it for you. Okay. But I personally like to have something dynamic, something in place that automatically shows those details. So here you can see, I pulled it for one of those project, and you can see right here, it says 57% requirement has test coverage, and 42% does not have test coverage. So this is good, right? This is good that we have it written somewhere so that we can go and write test cases for the remaining requirements, right? We should not have requirement that is that doesn't have test cases. I mean, obviously we'll have requirement at the initial stage which does not have test cases, but I'm talking about we should not have requirement accepted or completed without having test cases, right? Without test cases, we cannot test them. Without testing, no one will accept it. Right, so that's the whole 9-year and whole life cycle basically. So another way in Jira, you can see the test coverage report. Traceability should be the same thing, more or less. Let me generate that. For the same project, I'm expecting. So you can see here, right? This is so much better. So this is showing exactly what RTM is that I was showing you in Excel sheet. Let me show you again in Excel sheet, right? I included this. We have requirement ID on the left-hand side and associated test case is on the right-hand side. If you look at this here, it's doing the same thing. This is your requirement, and it says right here, requirement. This is your test, associated test. Look at this requirement, associated test. This is exactly what we have done there. So this requirement has how many test cases? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 test cases against this requirement. Then moving to next one. Does not have any test cases. So you can clearly see, right? This is your RTM, requirement traceability metrics, automatically created by the tool, the application that the project is using, and it's exactly showing what is the coverage, what exactly are the tests has written against the test, against the requirement. This is
I have
not
a
a big
question here,
topic.
Kader bhai.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So since these tools, they have automatic traceability and they cover all the requirement and test cases coverage. So once we are creating on the Excel sheet, how we measure that all the requirement has been covered in the test cases?
It's either or. You don't need to create an Excel sheet if you have a tool doing the job. I'm giving you different options. So let's say your company does not have a advanced tool that does this for you. In that case, you need to create something in Excel. Excel can do everything. You don't need a tool, but obviously it's a manual work. Excel sheet does not automatically populate your test cases or the data or anything, right? You have to create it manually, but you can see this kind of advanced tool that does it automatically for you. What I'm showing in Excel sheet, your company, if they don't have this tool, you can create it in Excel sheet. But if you're, I'm just giving you more options, that's all. More ways of creating RTM. And if you have one in place, you don't need the other. Okay, so do we have clear understanding of RTM? What is RTM? How to create the traceability metrics? This would be your interview question. How do you ensure your test coverage? How do you ensure that you have written test cases for each one of your requirements? This would be your interview questions. So this is not a big topic. Don't get confused. I'm spending quite a bit of time here, but that doesn't mean this is a big topic. This is very simple. We just need to understand, that's all. Questions, guys? Can you guys hear me? Everyone is so quiet today.
Yes, I have a
understand.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the test case will be written by the tester, and after the test case is done, then the quality assurance team gonna review it. Is the RTM is the review, or RTM is something different?
So you mentioned testers and quality assurance team. Do we understand the difference, or so? Well, let's not get confused. So quality assurance team and tester are the same thing, same group of people.
Okay.
That is us. This is what we are learning, and this is where we would be getting a job, hopefully.
So the tester has to write the RTM, right?
RTM. Yeah, so tester, this is our responsibility. Like, if you look at the document, right, we are performing our STLC process, and this is the fourth one, right? We have us testers or quality assurance folks. We are these are our activities, right? Requirement analysis, creating test plan, creating test cases, creating RTM. So this is just mapping. So number one, bullet point, and number three, mapping them against each other is what we are doing here. And number four. Can you understand this? This should be
Okay.
crystal clear. Yeah. So requirement, we are so after analyzing the requirement, we create test cases, and we are mapping those test cases against the requirement. That's all.
I also have a question. I kind of want to understand what's the reason for the RTM? Is it just kind of like to have a quick glance document to be able to see, like I said, with a quick glance that there's a test case for each requirement? Like, who would be looking at that? What's the reason why this is so important to have this step?
This is a very good question. I would like to see if anyone from this group have understanding this question, and if you would like to answer that. We need to create RTM.
Assalamu alaikum, bhai. I don't know if you're going to answer the question, but can I just tell you my understanding of RTM? Hello, can you hear me? So what I understood so far is basically RTM is where we keep a trace of how many test cases we have written for individual requirements.
Kadiba, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
A little bit.
Oh man, what's going on?
Now
we can hear you now.
Now we can hear you.
Yeah, so I wasn't talking for the most part. So no, that's good. Your understanding is good. So one thing we need to understand, this is a process-oriented field. This is a process-oriented job. And we spend more time in processes than actual work. This is a this is a field you'll be spending a lot of time documenting, creating processes, creating and maintaining documentation in place and the processes. And STLC, when it comes to STLC, this is nothing but, following processes as well. And now creating RTM ensures that and gives clients the confidence, the project team confident, your management confident, you as a tester gives you confidence that, hey, I have written test cases for all of my requirements. This starts, the entire testing process starts from test cases itself. If you do not have test cases created, you will not be testing those, because your tests are driven from your test cases. Test cases are the steps and the action item that you're recording. You need to ensure that you have those created for each and every requirement, right? And without creating RTM, you won't know there will not be a possible way of knowing that you have created test cases for every single requirements of yours. You could be in a project that has thousands of requirements. How do you know if somebody asks you what is the percentage of test cases you have created for your requirement? You won't know without your RTM. Your RTM, like I was showing you before, your RTM, it tells you exactly what percentage test coverage you have in place. Look at here. You're missing more than half of the requirement. You did not create test cases, 58%. That's a lot. You did not create any test cases for that. This number should be 0. Each and every requirement must have test cases written. So right here, like this is just capturing one sprint. So if you look at this one, this has 10, 2, and 1. So I think 15 or 16 requirements here. But if this number was 200, how many, if you don't create an RTM document or a dynamic document that I have here to give you visibility on how much test cases you have created, you won't know. And if you don't know, then you won't be confident enough saying that, okay, this application was fully tested. So RTM plays a huge role. They give you that details of your test coverage, of your testing, and everything else associated with it. What do you guys think? Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, so from what I'm understanding is RTM basically gives you and I guess the team, your managers, all the stakeholders, confidence in your testing. And that you're on
Exactly.
track. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions on RTM? All right, last topic. It's going to be quick and we'll end it after this. So last thing is after creating RTM, now you have done your pre-steps pretty much most of your pre-steps before you start your testing. Last thing before your test execution, this is actual testing where it says execute system test or system test phase. This is your actual execution, and before that, everything else is your pre-steps. Now, last thing before you jump into testing, creating your test environment or configuring your test environment. So this is also a interview question. Like they may ask you like, how do you create your test environment? So this is something we need to understand clearly. So how do you create your test environment? Before you start testing, you need to create your test environment. This is like a checklist of the things that, guys, can you give me like 60 seconds? There is Azan going on right now in the background. So give me 60 seconds, please. All right, I'm back, guys. Sorry about that. Okay, so we were talking about test environment. How do you configure your test environment? Test environments are very similar thing as test entry criteria that was defined under test plan. So if you guys can hear me and see this document, once the environment is given to you, you just don't go, like I said before, this is a process-oriented field and you need to follow the process. Before you jumping into your testing, you need to ensure that you have a checklist in place and those checklists are checked off. For example, before testing, you need to make sure that you have the requirement document in place, you have your test plan in place, test cases are fully developed and ready. It require access are given. For example, the application access, right? You know, to test the application, you need to have access to the application. Test data in place. Some application or some testing would require some test data, and your test data could be anything. For example, login information, or if you it could be anything. Test data is a big topic. It could be anything. Let's say if you're testing a payment system, you need those information, or if you're dealing with a list of users, you need those information, things like this. Then testing team in place, the application obviously ready, and unit and integration testing is done, things like this. These are your test configuration pre-step, basically pre-step before you start your testing. Okay, described there in terms of test environment. So this is something they would ask you in your interview, like how do you configure your test environment, or how do you set up your test environment? So these are like pre-step. Before you start testing, you need to make sure sets of checklists that you have in place, those are checked off. Like, you know, I need to have my requirement in place, my test plan, my test cases, my RTM, my application should be developed and ready. Unit and integration testing is done. Things like this before you start testing. Once everything is done, you start your test execution. And when you execute your test, you may find defects, and then you would log them and you track them. So next week will be huge. We're going to talk about these three, and this goes side by side. We'll do test execution, and then we'll find and log bugs, and then we'll show you the bug life cycle and things like this. Questions, guys, before we end this? I will not give any additional homework this week. What I would really request you guys to watch that video, test cases, look at your test cases to see how you can improve, how you can submitted your homework, look into your homework to see, can you improve your test cases. Can you create an RTM? Do you understand what is RTM and how to create an RTM? See if you can do that. Maybe I'll just give a simple homework to create an RTM against your test cases that you created, against those requirement and test cases. You can create one in Excel sheet and submit it. I think that would be great. The other thing is, those of you did not watch that video, you're behind. Trust me, you're behind. Watch that video, and that's pretty much it from my side. If you have any questions, please let me know. Group studies, participate in group studies, be active. Okay, really counting on you guys. We are, I want you to know we're working hard for you guys. We want to change this. We want to help you. We would like to bring this to UK. We already did, but we want to expand it. We want to help you guys change the career for some of you, right? You know, some of you are here to see how it goes, and some of you really want to do it. If you really want to do it, we are here. Honestly, I want to see how this goes. And I know there's huge potential there. The market is extremely good. Same as here, if not better. So I'm really excited about it. But to get there, we have to work really, really hard. Like if this was, I can give you one example, right? You know, right? If this was anyone else, I don't think they would do it. Like I'm in Bangladesh, and this is literally the entire Bangladesh is sleeping. I am here working with you guys. I think it's 4:30 right now, or 5. What time is it? I think 4:30 right now in Bangladesh. I'm here staying up for you guys. This is commitment. And you need to show me your commitment from your side by doing the work, aggressive, be involved. And of course, once this is done, there's going to be another process of preparing you for the job market and the interviews and everything else. Throughout the journey, you know, I would need your commitment and hard work. Then only we can collectively will be successful. I won't be able to help you if you don't want to be helped, if you don't want to extend your hands to be helped. This is a long journey, and if you understand and if you're in it for good, I think that then only will be successful. So yeah, looking forward to it. Let's see what happens.